Hello and welcome to this episode of House Renovation. I'm just going to be talking over some of the time lapses, so I hope you enjoy. So I started by ripping down all of the old wallpaper that I'd put up the first time. The creases weren't very good and honestly I wasn't very happy with how it went. So I got some new wallpaper. This stuff is even thicker. I used what I learned last time and did a much better job. As well as it being thicker, it's also wider, meaning I need to do less sheets of wallpaper to cover the whole length of the wall. This time I made sure to put on a little bit more wallpaper paste so I could slide it more easily and make sure there wasn't a gap. One thing I definitely did was as I was going along, I made sure that there was no gap in between any of the pieces of paper. I made sure there was no overlap as well, and I was really particular about this, and if it wasn't perfect, I wasn't going to carry on going any further. I spent a lot of time lining up the left edge, and then I used a basic plastic tool to scrape the rest of the wallpaper across. As you can see at the bottom, I also managed to create my own little wallpaper dispensing device. This is just a broom with one end on a bin, one end on the stool. This was really good because I found that the first time, because the roll was on the floor, it picked up lots of little bits of dust and little flecks of paint and other things, so that when it was actually applied to the wall, there were horrible little nibbles. As wallpapering the walls had gone so well, I decided to have a go at wallpapering the roof. Unfortunately, this didn't go quite as well. When you're wallpapering the roof or the ceiling, you have gravity to fight with. As you can see here, I'm having quite a lot of trouble making sure that the first bit of wallpaper that I do stays up whilst managing to get the next bit. This proved to be really tricky and I ended up having to try and prop it up using whatever I could. Because it kept coming down, I ended up having lots of creases and little fold lines and everything wasn't quite straight. This was really frustrating since the wallpapering on the wall felt much easier. I tried to flatten out as many of the creases as I could using a little plastic scraper and it made it a lot better, but it still wasn't great. Anyway, I tried to push on and do the second sheet. This one seemed to be a lot more tricky for some reason. After having tried this, I watched a couple of other videos and people suggested using little thumbtacks or something like that to help stick up and pin up the wallpaper until it dries. This one actually took a very long time and it kept falling down as soon as I left it on that very left-hand wall. I managed to eventually get up there with a knife and cut away the excess paper, which meant it wasn't as heavy and it didn't pull itself down. Unfortunately, I'd left the rest of the wallpaper for so long that it had already started to bubble and the surface was really not that great. I tried my best to flatten it out, but I ended up just taking it down. I don't think I'm going to be doing any more ceiling wallpapering this time. As I'd taken down the wallpaper, I actually needed to go back up with a scraper and scrape off all the leftover wallpaper paste. This took a surprisingly long time, but I wanted to get a good finish, as the next thing I was going to try was painting it, and having lots of chunks of dried up wallpaper paste was something I definitely didn't want to have to deal with. Next I went back and filled up all the cracks and the holes with polyfiller, and then went back with a bit of sandpaper and tried to get them as smooth as possible. As well as this, I scuffed up the roof to try and give the paint something extra to stick onto. I went around the outside and did edging. This was just with a basic paintbrush. Because the rest of the walls haven't been painted, I didn't need to be particularly accurate. It didn't matter if it got some on the walls. I then came back with a roller and had a go at rolling it. I started with a small roller, but straight away I went out and got myself an extendable roller. This meant it was much easier. I didn't have to stand on my stool to be able to reach the ceiling, and it meant my back wasn't being extended as often. I started off with far too little paint every time I used the roller, but I quickly learned that I could load it up with quite a lot of paint. Of course, I'd forgot to do around the light, so I had to go back with a paintbrush just to get those bits really nice. I carried on and managed to do the whole roof. Later that evening, I went back and did a second coat. This second coat made a big difference. Some of the cracks and some of the bits of polyfiller that were glowing through were covered up and now no longer could be seen at all. There were still definitely quite a few bits where there were cracks. Sometimes, because I was using a bit of a cheaper roller, a little bit of lint would end up in the paint and I'd have to go up and scrape it off, and that became a real nuisance. So, as well as the work I've been doing in the master bedroom with painting, I've also been doing a bit of the electronics. One thing I'm going to be doing is adding in some sockets. So I'm adding 2 sockets in the master bedroom. I'm going to add another 1 or 2 sockets in the secondary bedroom. And I'm now in the office and I'm going to be adding a 3rd socket just over there. So to do this, we need to actually break into the existing circuit. This is something I've never done before, so I read up quite a lot. I went out and I bought myself some 4mm electrical cables. These then can be run from a break that we add into the main ring, and we extend that ring up and back to the outlets that we want. In the master bedroom, I'm going to run a ring to one of the sockets, and then I'm actually going to use a spur for the second socket. I'm showing you in here because in the master bedroom, everything's under a lot of floorboards and a lot harder to show. In here, it's much easier to see. So before that, there's a socket on my right-hand side, and there are both lines of the main ring running along here. So when I went downstairs, I broke the circuit with the circuit breaker, making sure that everything wasn't live. Came up here, and I actually cut one of the main lines that contained the ring for this for the sockets in this house. So the cable coming up from here, under here, you might not be able to see it very well, but that cable just there is the main circuit, and then the 2 cables just there that run all the way along to the socket are for that new socket, and the other end of the cable runs along to the same point. I cut the cables, stripped back the outer sheathing, and then also stripped back about 1 centimetre from the end of the individual cables. With that done, I then used one of these really handy quick connect cable connectors. All you need to do is open it, slot the cable into either of these 3 holes, and then clip it closed, and that's got a 32 amp rating, which is the same as the amperage rating on your circuit. So these will fail after the circuit breaker, meaning that your circuit is still safe. So that now means that the main ring comes in, goes up to this new socket, and then carries on where it used to just go straight past. So that's the end of today's video. If you're thinking of doing something similar, like adding another socket into one of your rooms, check out the video below. And if you're not sure about what you're doing, it's always safer to get someone in who knows what they're doing. If you've liked this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I've now been working all weekend, so I'm going to treat myself with a nice jug of butterscotch Angel Delight, and hopefully I'll see you next time.